Taken.
Okay, cool. So your approach, would you say your position was?
Choice. You could say that.
Why?
Well, I just take it to be irreducible.
What does that mean?
Well, it's like a basic value. It's not a value that's justified in virtue of something further.
Okay, could you expound on that a little bit so I can know what the fuck you're talking about?
Why do I value X rather than Y, right? You might appeal to some value, some further value, but eventually it might bottom out in some value that doesn't have any further justification.
I feel like I'm learning about Big Bang Theory right now.
Right. So, okay, so do you have any cutoff for abortion? Not that that made any sense to me, but let's keep going.
Yeah, on a case-by-case basis.
Vary on a case-by-case basis. So do you have it like, what do you consider, do you consider it to be like human, alive, all that good stuff, or no? Fetus to be human and alive? Then I need to define human and alive for you.
On like a standard definition, sure, but maybe you have some other definition in mind.
Like what would be a alternative to the two that I proposed?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Well, so if you don't know what they are, how can you say that you would make an exception for something that I would say doesn't exist?
I'm not a moral realist, and I'm a relativist, and I'm a particularist. So it's just going to depend on what seems to be right in some situation. It's just that
Okay.
I was understanding that people wanted to argue that there's some principled reason why all fetuses or whatever should be brought to term, and that was something that was true independent of the aims and desires of any agent, right? And I just don't see why anybody would accept that.
So by that logic, unalive each other based on their own aims and desires.
It might be by their lights, sure.
Yeah. So you would say that. So what are you, a subjective moralist? I mean, you're saying you're a relativist. So how do you do you not believe in laws? Do you believe in like anarchy? How do you establish anything as, either good, bad, moral, immoral based on your worldview?
People fight it out, and
So there is no definitive right or wrong. It's just what society agrees upon.
well, it's going to be relativized presumably to agents, but maybe agents will agree, and then if they're the ones that have like control of the laws,
Right. So yeah. So if the agents agree that slavery,
Yeah, I know.
is it okay?
if they agree that it should be illegal, then you don't have any issues with that outside of your own personal preference. Okay.
Well, I don't even know what it would mean to have an issue with it outside of my own personal preference.
It means that you would say that it's wrong regardless of your feelings upon it, basically.
What people are talking about when they say stuff like that.
So if just me and you are the only two people on Earth, effectively, we wouldn't know what is right or wrong. If I wanted to unalive you and you wanted to unalive me, we could just say that that's both our preferences and just leave it at that. We don't come to any conclusions based on anything. If I did unalive you, that would only hurt you effectively, and it would only be wrong because you're there. So once you're gone, it wouldn't be wrong anymore.
Are relativized to individual agents.
Right. So
It wouldn't be good in the
Yeah. So effectively, like what you're saying is that of all what you're saying, like if I wanted to put that into practice, if all the European peoples all agreed that it's okay to wipe out all the Asian peoples, once the Asian peoples are gone and nobody disagrees that that was wrong, then that makes it right. Effectively, because there would be no agents there to say it's wrong. The only people that were to say it's wrong were the ones who were getting wiped out, and once they're gone, we wouldn't have their input. There would be no agent to hold their position. In which case, the new position would be that was good, since everybody subject.
No matter whether the agents are no longer there or not, right? Relative to
interesting.
Relative to their values, it would be wrong.
How would we know that outside of the agents being there?
Well, I'm not saying we would necessarily know it.
Right. So it would be right because I believe it's right. Right. I mean, we already established. I mean, that's what or could lead to.
Not knowing? That's true even on a realist view.
I didn't say not knowing. I'm saying that it would be agreed upon subjectively and collectively that we think that that is okay. And now without any agents there to object, then there would be nobody there to offer a counter perspective to that, in which case that would make sense. The moral distinction is being granted by my subjective self. There would be nobody there to correct me. Yeah, so your worldview leads to anarchy or nihilism or I don't even know what else it might lead to, but not good things effectively. So I don't think that's a practical worldview that I would want to hold.
Look, first, I'm not sure there's anything wrong with the view. Second of all, I'm not granting that that's what it leads to, right? I didn't see any chain of reasoning that establishes that's what it would lead to. Right?
It could lead to that because there's no reason self. Right? Because I'm the agent of my own perception. And my perception is that it's right. Or that
people look, even on a realist view, people can misperceive what's right and what's wrong. Right?
Wait. How could they misperceive what is right or wrong? How's that possible? What's right or wrong is
I'm talking about on a realist view, not on my view.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I don't hold a realist view, so I'm not sure what that entails.
Realist view? So you're a moral relativist. Subjectivism.
Maybe. No, I believe in objective morality, so I don't know what you want to call that, but
realism, or let's maybe call it robust realism.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Same thing with like arguing with nihilist. It just doesn't go anywhere because they just don't care. So it's kind of pointless.
Came up here because 11 was trying to run. I saw him in another live trying to run. Somebody would offer some principle in virtue of which an abortion could be justified, and then he would try to offer some kind of counterexample to the principle, and then ask, what's in a principled way different about this kind of case, where this kind of case, would be wrong on your view, right? Or wouldn't be right on your view, rather.
I think the views make sense when I can pragmatically apply them. And then when I apply a nihilistic or your view, whatever you're calling that, I forget what you called it. When I apply that into pragmatics, it doesn't work, or it leads to something that I wouldn't be considering to be effective for something that would work.
I don't actually see how it has any different practical consequences, right? Because you two realists can disagree on what the moral facts are, right? So in practice, they're just going to act on the basis of what seem to them to be the moral facts, right?
Well, you're saying that two people that adhere to objective morality could disagree on what is morally right. Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah, and then so in practice, it seems like it's the same.
Well, yeah, it could lead to that, and I grant that. But then it would lead to like, well, why it is either truth or not truth, in my opinion. So that would lead to like a theological debate, since the only people I've seen that make those claims are basing it in some kind of religion.
Oh, no, there's plenty of realists who are not theists.
I'm saying that I've seen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no.
The only people that
I can
hold
tell you that
moral viewpoint are the religious people. I've never seen side of that.
Well, like for instance, in academic philosophy in Anglophone countries, the majority of philosophers are atheists and also moral realists. At least according to polls, according to a famous poll called the Phil Papers poll.
Yeah, I've been meaning to look into moral realism a little more, but I have not yet. So,
Well, I'm just saying what you're calling objectivism, right? Sounds like what might mean what robust realism might be.
Okay, interesting.
Anyway, I wanted to talk to 11 because I wanted to see how he would answer, how he would sort of press his objection to, a pro-choice person who was not a realist and who is a particularist.
Interesting.
Over here.
Yeah, I usually argue my position from like my foundation. I find if you make an argument from somebody else's foundation, and I'm sure other people can, but in my experience, when you make an argument based on their foundation, it does generally, that would mean I have to like justify your position on something. You generally don't win like arguments, debates that way.
I don't know.
Host, did you hear my dad yelling at me?
Yeah.
I missed that.
That was, yeah. He was fucking mad, dude.
Why was he mad? Because you're on TikTok?
Huh?
I said, why was he mad? Because you're on TikTok? That's like such a boomer thing to get mad over.
No, he was mad. Can y'all let Carter up? That's my boy. He's
Sure.
yeah. Anyways, he was mad. I was like, I didn't know I subscribed to something that was money, and then it's been paying him monthly for like the past 6 months.
Oh, he's been paying for your subscription?
Wait, what happened to Carter? Oh.
I don't know. I accepted him up here, and then he has to request again because I can't send him an invite.
Oh, but yeah, he was mad because I was using. I guess maybe I used wallet instead of mine.
How old are you?
I'm 19, but I still live with him.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was just curious. I wasn't sure if you're going to be like, I'm 27. Well, like, bro, how did that even happen? But 19, that makes sense.
Carter, why keep leaving, bro? Wait, are there any pro choices in here,
No. Well, wait, Jack is, yeah.
Jack is, but
I thought that you guys were having like a...
he has a...
Jack, what's your stance?
Well, I don't see a principled reason why all fetuses should be brought.
So you're basically saying that, so the human rights? You don't see a reason. You don't see a reason. Go ahead.
Well,
He
I
thinks
don't,
it's subjective.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a moral realist, so if by rights you mean something that holds independently of the desires of any agent, then I would say no.
So you don't believe in objective morals?
No.
So, okay, so can we argue that? Because I feel like I could change our mind on that, and then we can go to... So what do you think an objective moral is?
Actually, I don't really know what it is.
So an objective moral is a moral without contradiction or error. If you're trying to say this moral is good, okay, so this is the best moral for. So let's say an objective moral is a moral that creates the greatest order and the highest possibility of good and the lowest possibility of bad. and it has no contradiction or error in its claim. So using logic and reasoning, you cannot contradict it. Basically, a perfect moral. That's what objective moral is. And that's why we debate, because we try to make our subjective morals objective by...
I was understanding an objective moral to be something like an agent has to do something that's independent of their aims and desires.
Yeah, so that they have a moral. So a moral, basically saying, "Here, you have to do this for the greater good." That's what a moral is. For good, you have to do this to be good. That's what a moral is. It's basically saying, "Hey, if you don't do this, you're bad." It's not saying that you can't do this. It's just saying that if you do that, you will be bad.
Yeah, well, I don't really understand what it means to say you have a reason to do something that you have. Do
Do you think good and bad only comes from humans?
Well, not exactly.
What other species would it come from?
Well, it isn't about there being species. I just take it that good and bad are relativized to agents, right?
So and bad. Do you think good and bad, like only exist? Like, do you think we make it? Do you think good and bad is dependent on humans?
I don't think it thinks good and bad exists.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about objective goods and bads or robust realist goods and bads, then I don't think those exist, But I think there are goods in the sense of what guides actions, right? Which is to say that if a person judges something their lights, then they have reason to act in accord with that good that they recognize.
What do you think moral good is, and what do you think for a rapist to be a school teacher? Like, obviously very, very messed up, but it's good for a child rapist to be a good school teacher, because for him, he has a lot of options, very messed up. But what about moral good and bad? What is your definition of moral good, and what is your definition of moral bad?
Well, I mean, if I were to use that kind of language, it would be in this agent relative way.
So yes, I would argue.
The battle of what?
Entropy.
No.
Okay, so let me explain it to you, because I would argue that as soon as life came into existence, good and bad became an actual objective concept. So now let me tell you something. So if you knew everything about the Big Bang at the exact moment it started, like you can't get right before, like the closest you could get to it. If you knew every detail, everything about how the Big Bang was going to explode, all the science, you could predict what stars will be made and where, what local clusters, what galaxies will be formed in what space and time, what planets will have rings and what planets won't, what planets will have moons. You could predict every detail of the universe up until the end of it, right? So matter, there's order, right? Perfect order. Correct? And you are you there? So with it, life is entropy. Entropy is the definition is disorder and order. So life is unpredictable and it's disorder and order. So but the battle of entropy is for the disorder making its own order to making its own order to what do you call it? To stay alive, right? So you can't it's hard to stay alive if you don't have order. But yet you are disorder in the universe. So you must make your own order. So what I am saying, objective good and objective bad is what, or objective morals is what makes the best order. Do you get what I'm saying?
Really?
So what is it that you're confused about?
I guess I'm not sure what you're understanding order to be.
Order? Yeah, so basically saying that harmoniously, so that there's not chaos. So order being like, we all have a certain set of rules to follow. Or I guess, so like basically like constants in the universe. That should be in the universe, basically. That's what order is.
You're talking about things like natural laws. Is that what you mean?
Constants for something to exist. Constants for something to exist. That's what order is. So for something to, yeah. So if you were talking about a rock, the order would need to it would have to have the the gravitational, the right gravity, or if you're talking about planets, it would have to have. So yeah, do you get what I'm saying? Am I confusing you a little bit?
But I mean, if those laws really are invariant across space, and
What do you
I
mean?
don't know. What do you think that those constants hold across space and time?
What do you all constants are the same across space and time.
Right. So then I don't. What way, regardless of what agents do, then what normative significance do they have?
Hold on, I'll be right back. So I'm
Okay.
Jack, so do you not believe we should have like any law at all then?
I
How do you
believe
justify,
we
like,
should have laws.
society?
No, like the point is that I have values, other people have values. If we share values, then we can fight, find into the law,
Yeah,
enshrine our values into the laws.
Yeah, but you're saying you don't have any way to establish whether those values are like good or bad outside of your own perspective. It was like my point earlier, but so
Well,
like, how would we know if like your shared values with society enact a law that's actually bad?
that what? Say that again?
How would we know that your values across that are shared with society and other people enact a law that is like actually bad? How would you like know that?
Well, but when you say actually bad, it sounds like you're talking about some kind of robust realist type of view.
Well, do you have any concept of like something that's good or bad?
Yeah,
Okay, so
but that's just an agent relative sense.
laws just be relevant on just the majority of people. So that therefore,
Presumably,
like,
yeah. I mean,
all
well, I
laws
mean,
are good then,
if the law is determined by a majority,
majority.
I mean, there are types of laws that are determined by individuals.
So when you say that not all laws are good,
well, there
since it's determined by the majority.
no. You could have the view that the majority accord with your own
Wait, so
values.
if you can tell me that it's bad now, which is literally what I just asked you a moment ago, all laws, you would be able to say that the law is bad. Although when I asked you before, I said, what's a bad law? And you're like, I don't know. I don't know what's bad. But now I said that we could enact something that would go against your views. And now you're saying that could be bad. So you do know what I meant when I said bad.
Well, no, I'm saying that if you're talking about a robust realist sense, then I don't know. If you're talking about a relative sense, then I do have a concept like that.
When you say concept, you mean just based on your opinion and nothing else?
Meaning that I understand what's meant by good in that sense, right?
I don't.
Like, for instance, you probably think that some values are agent relative, right? Like maybe vanilla is good, right? If
So
you
that's
think
why we
chocolate
talk- That's why we talk about morally good and morally bad. So because there's a difference. Like the context of good, of what good you were talking about matters. So morally good and morally bad.
Yeah, maybe I should have prefaced with that when I was talking about good or bad, but I kind of just thought that was implied, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is that when it comes to things like abortion, I see them as fundamentally similar to things like chocolate and vanilla.
How?
Yeah, so
you think? So you see? So you see more? Go ahead.
I was going to say, so under that view, then me believing that, like, if you view it the same as chocolate and vanilla, then let's say you like chocolate and I like vanilla, right? Then I'm just as justified in my position that vanilla is good in your view there, right?
Yeah, by your lights, you're justified. By my lights, you're unjustified. Right? But neither one of us is right or wrong in reference to some standard independently.
Yeah.
So wait, so mustache
man. How do you put that into
Well, I just understand laws to be what gets erected by the winners in political contests.
Yeah.
Right.
So then why do we care at all about anything? Why do we try to debate our things? If it's all subjective.
Well,
yeah, I can just force you to do what I want, and then which is not nearly wrong there.
Well, it's not wrong in the robust realist sense.
You're not really wrong in the sense that is how it works.
Yeah, but yeah. So like, I'm actually trying to say that it doesn't actually make sense to have arguments about fundamental values. What might actually make sense is to defend a value in light of some other value that you hold, right? So it might actually make sense, so if we can find common ground, it might be the case that
I don't know, man. I don't want to argue with this guy anymore because, he left. I was like, if you want to talk to him, you can. But I already did my Schmidt aside example earlier. There's really no case you have against that outside of your own subjective view, saying that I think it's wrong. But as soon as everybody says no reason behind it outside of just your view on it, so I don't know what to do with that.
What the robust realist says, because people disagree about what's morally right and what's morally wrong in the robust sense all the time.
But what we're basing that on is an objective, moral truth. So it's not based on my feelings. The things that I hold to be morally based on my subjective view of those things, I actually am indifferent to, or actually would feel inclined to do the opposite of those things. But I don't adhere to them because I have an inclination towards them or not. In my view of it, if I just based everything in my view of it, you'd have anarchy in the world, essentially. Except, with the exception of getting people to agree with me.
I wonder if that's really true, though. So, I take, for example, the claim that God is good. Is that something that's based on an intuition or something else?
I would base it on something else. I don't think that's intuitive. I don't think God's intuitive in a sense.
Yeah, so somebody who thought that God was not good, right, would just appeal to their intuitions, right?
Yeah, I said I don't think that would apply to God. I don't think it's intuitive to say he's not good. So if they're saying that he...
Well, I'm trying to understand what would justify your belief that God is good. Because that's going to be some kind of value you hold, right? That God is good.
Yeah, sure.
So one should do what God commands, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. So you think God's commands are good, right? Now, somebody said, well, why think God's commands are good? What would you say?
Why do I believe they're good?
Yeah.
Because of natural natural revelation, and also the and also scripture. Obviously, I forget what that's called. Another kind of revelation.
Special revelation.
Special. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I'm not sure how that really answers the question, but at it. So, with respect to natural revelation, let's say it's true that nature reveals the existence of God. Does it reveal that God is good?
I don't know that the natural revelation would necessitate that belief, although, I mean, maybe you could come to that conclusion. I'm not like a theologian or whatever, theologian to, like, I don't study that. Maybe. I don't, but I suppose you could come to that conclusion.
Yeah, because I'm a little bit unclear how nature could reveal that God was good. But if you didn't already have an independent standard of the good, right? With respect to special revelation, it sounds like you want to say something like, there's this text that you take to be authored by God, in which God reports that that he is good, and that his commands are good, and that you think is reliable, right?
Right.
But I guess the question would be, if somebody said, what's the evidence that it's good, apart from God merely stating it, what would you say?
I would say, like, the practice in scripture would support that as well. So, like, even, like, ultimately, even if God is not real and we follow God's laws, I feel like that would lead to a better outcome pragmatically than it would if we didn't.
Yeah, but you see, but the problem is you're appealing to a standard of good that you have that's prior to God's commands.
Not
in which
necessarily.
to assess.
I mean, yeah, but it's at least it's outside. Well, like, at least what I'll grant is it's outside of my own perspective, right? Because, like, much of what God commands, I don't intuitively think of as good, and I would prefer to do the opposite.
What I'm saying is, I don't think you're quite following the
Sure, you can. Yes.
the worry that I'm trying to raise. So what I'm saying is, there's a being who says that he is good, right? And somebody else says, okay, that's a claim. How do we assess it, right? Now, if you say...
Yeah, you wouldn't have... You mute it there, so I'm going to say you wouldn't have a way ultimately of knowing that because outside of God. So to try to say, like, if God gives us something that is good, to try to say, like, how do we know that is good? We don't, ultimately. Like, because we don't have the ability to know what is good or bad in and of ourselves.
Jack, I'm sorry, really quickly. You were, I recognize you from somewhere. I think
On YouTube.
I think I'm just putting this together because somebody in the comments said something about it, and I was like, wait a second. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
So, see, but then at that point, you're conceding the point, which is that basically it's just your intuitions versus that of your opponent, and there isn't really anything further to appeal to adjudicate between the two, which is basically what you were criticizing the relativist position as entailing.
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by that, because
Okay.
I don't see how you're saying my belief in God is intuitive.
No, not your belief in God, your belief that God's commands are good.
Right, you're saying that's intuitive.
I'm saying that the only way you can assess that is by seeing if the carrying out of God's commands accords with what you judge to be the good to begin with. Has a different set of values by which to assess what the carrying out of God's commands.
I think in a sense, when you apply it pragmatically, I think it would be kind of intuitive to, like, that we would have a better utility to society had we followed these commands. Not that we know, not that we can say, again, practice. I think more people, I guess you could say intuitively, would say they would prefer to live in a society that would follow those commands versus one that wouldn't.
Well, utility,
in a
though,
sense,
somebody could say, I don't think utility is a good value, right?
Yeah, but we wouldn't be following them like solely on the utility, but I think it would be intuitive for people to use that to kind of support it outside of like them being able to say it's good or bad, because we already said that we can't establish that. So in a sense, we don't know what is good or bad. So in a sense, I kind of like am agreeing with what you're saying, only I'm ascribing it to like ultimately we have an objective, which, again, that, and if other people claim to have that as well, then you could debate, which moral absolute is true. But
but if you can debate which moral absolute is true, it just seems like, how would that debate be resolved?
Jack, can I answer the question? When you talk about abortion being similar to flavors of ice cream, right? When you think about Kant, right? When he talks about using reason to justify morality, intrinsic worth, and we have to weigh the autonomy and the rationality and moral agency of the mother and the child. Isn't that more important than the trivial flavor of ice creams?
Well, I understand the Kantian position maybe to be something like this, right? That built into that any agent already has certain commitments just in virtue of being an agent, right? So if you're an agent, agents is they have beliefs and desires. That's what it means to have beliefs and desires. Then what counts as rational by your lights is what conduces to realizing your desires, right? And so what that commits you to certain things, like that affords you a commitment to care about the truth about the world, because having knowledge of that is important to you. Similarly, it commits you to cultivating knowledge of yourself, because knowledge of yourself is relevant to you realizing your desires. And that's going to be the kind of thing that's true for any agent, right? But I don't see how there's a good argument from agency itself to things like that abortion is always bad or something like that. There are Kantians who try to claim that, but I've never sort of understood. I've never seen an argument. It's never sort of been. Maybe there is such an argument, right? But it's never been explained to me in such a way where I thought it really followed from agency itself, that type of substantive value.
I can say that, for example, fetus, right? There is a potential for rationality, and if we were to universalize this moral precept of being defies the categorical imperative and cause some sort of a contradiction, right? Because it entails that we can also do that for mentally disabled people, and then society would collapse, and the family.
See, when you say society would collapse, right? You're some kind of substantive value.
Yeah, I understand that.
By which to assess, right? And it just seems to me that's going to beg the question against certain interlocutors, right?
But the contradiction is actually, if we were to universalize this abortion being morally permissible, there will be the contradiction that I'm trying to get to is that at the end of the day, there will be no more there'll be no more, that there's this contradiction if you like for example, when I say lying is wrong, why is lying wrong? If we were to universalize this precept, we can't really tell what's true and what's false anymore. Yeah, so I'm trying to apply this similarly to abortion. If we were to universalize abortion, there will be no babies to abort anymore. Yeah, that sort of contradiction that I'm trying to go to based on pure reason, and that is to avoid the is-ought fallacy. That is what Hume says, the is-ought fallacy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like I don't really see why, from the fact that if X were to be universalized, it would have some consequence. I ought not to X in some given instance, right?
Universalizing the action, right? It's universal. So when I say, I can give an example. For example,
But I'm a moral particularist, right? So I don't accept that there really are any moral precepts, right?
yeah, but if you were to base our morality on the phenomenal world to understand it, then isn't that an is-ought fallacy? You can't make any sort of normative claim from that. Right?
No. I think that values are perceived, but I don't think what we perceive are principles, right? We perceive moral particulars.
Yeah. Then just want to ask, like, how do you convert that is to an ought?
No, I'm saying that what's perceived is a value, right? So in other words, to perceive a value is to acquire a desire.
Hard to understand, like how do we derive a moral or normative claim from a desire like that?
No, I'm saying that I think desires are normative because they're commitments.
I mean, maybe you're talking about your normative claim is based on personal preference, right? Yeah, maybe that's the different thing.
Well, I wouldn't call it personal
Difference.
preference, but you could use that language. I would just say that there are desires, right? So here's like a quick summary of the type of view that I would defend, right? So there are desires. Desires are commitments. Commitments are normative. What it means to say that a commitment is an internal ought. It's an internal obligation, right? We have an obligation to fulfill our commitments as long as we have them. That's what it means to have a commitment. And what I'm saying is that when we look out into the world, we perceive values, and in acquire commitments, just in virtue of perceiving the values.
Yeah, can you give an example for that? Because from what I read from Kant, right, it says it is.
Well, this is not a Kantian view, right? This is a different. Different type of view.
Maybe you can give me an example so that I can understand it better. Because you are saying we can actually derive an ought or normative claim from the phenomenal world using empirics, right, and our desire. Because since animals like the lion, they are killing the deers and the cows naturally, means that's okay, right? But that is a normative claim, right? Because they ought not to do it, right? Yeah, that's the difference. But it's easy
So
to understand.
I'm saying, look, let's say you see somebody, I don't know, beating somebody up, right? So you look out, it's wrong, right? And what it means to perceive that it's wrong is that you acquire a belief that it's wrong, right? But what it is to acquire a belief is to desire that it not obtain, right? And in virtue of having a desire is a commitment. In virtue of having that commitment, all else equal, internally bound, right? You have an internal obligation to fulfill that commitment.
So, are you using a moral bridge from this? Like for example, when you talk about someone being bullied or being beaten up, right? Your axiomatic moral bridge is that harming is wrong, therefore you ought not to do it.
No,
No.
I'm saying that that there's a value property in the beating up of a person, right? And some agents will perceive it as wrong, right? They'll perceive that value property wrong, right? And because they perceive that it's wrong, they will believe that it's wrong, and they will desire that it not obtain, right? There could be other agents who perceive those value properties in other ways, right? But for any agent who perceives it as wrong, they will acquire a commitment to it not obtaining.
So from what I hear, you subscribe to a sort of moral relativism, right?
Yes.
Jack, is this like a sense theoretic account of morality?
Sensibility, theoretic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sensibility theoretic.
Yeah, so I think there may be a confusion thinking that perceiving value is the same as of the perceiver. I think
I'm saying it's a little bit like a secondary quality.
Right.
Right. Like like it's the fact that things have reflect certain wavelengths of light that make it the case that they're perceived as red.
Right.
Right. But they might be perceived, they might have a different experience of what redness is like. They could have like an inverted, right? But,
Or like the music that's playing in your background.
yeah.
Some people might perceive that as lovely.
Right, exactly.
And others perceive
might,
no value in that at all.
Right, or they might think it's very annoying.
Right.
Wait, Jack. So these preferences. So you said that morality in the preferences, correct?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So you were talking about preferences, meaning like you would compare some moral intuition or whatever to like whether or not you like chocolate or vanilla, correct?
Yes.
So now can you explain to me how preferences are going to, or actually hold on. So what do you mean by like moral value or morality there within preferences?
Oh, I was just saying that I think that some people perceive chocolate as being desirable. Some people think that chocolate is not desirable. But
Wait, Jack, that's not what I asked. Yeah, that's not what I asked. So I'm asking, like, when you talk about morality, like, what are you talking about?
Well, I was just sort of like, people seem like they have this way of classifying some actions as moral and some actions as, sort of neither moral nor immoral, right? So like eating chocolate ice cream might be some kind of non-moral or, some kind of like non-moral action, but they're going to want to say, beating people up or torturing people or, that kind of thing are examples of moral actions.
Yeah, so what's the symmetry breaker between moral, not moral, and amoral?
Oh, I'm saying I don't think there's really a principled distinction between those things. I mean, maybe you could say, you might want to use the language where to where I have an interest in
Or no, I'm
interfering
asking
with
you.
your.
Yeah, I'm asking you. Can you?
No, I don't think there's a principle.
Okay, so if there's not a difference, then now tell me how eating ice cream.
Oh, I'm just saying that if you like chocolate ice cream, that gives you a reason to eat it. And
Well, no, I didn't ask about the reason. I want the argument of why me eating chocolate ice cream is morally good or morally bad. What's the argument?
well, no, I wasn't saying that they're morally good or morally bad.
Well, wait a minute.
I was
Hold on.
just saying-
Wait, Jack, you just agreed to this. Yeah, so I asked you, you said that they could be morally good, morally wrong, or amoral belief, and you said there's no distinction. Okay, meaning that they're going to be morally good or morally bad.
No.
Asked you if
What
you
I
held
was
that.
no, you're misunderstanding. What I'm saying is that what the kinds of actions that people class as moral actions.
I'm asking you. I'm asking you, not people. I'm asking you.
I would just probably forego the term moral altogether. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so if you're foregoing, so then what makes an action good or bad?
Just whether it's desirable or not.
Okay, so once again, if I desire chocolate ice cream, is this morally good or bad?
It's good. Well, I wouldn't say morally. I would just leave that out.
Okay, well, is it good or bad?
Yeah, it's good by your lights.
Okay, so what's the argument that this preference can be good or bad?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, so you're saying that so you're saying preferences can be good or bad, correct? I mean, that's exactly what you just said. So can they be good or bad? Preferences, that is.
You mean, can I judge somebody else's preference to be
No,
bad?
I'm asking you in the identity of yourself having preferences that you say preferences determine whether something is good or bad. So I'm asking you in your identity, our preferences good or bad? And you're going to say, well, it depends on the desire. So now I just want to know under your framework, what is the argument for what determines good and bad of said desire?
Do you, Joshua, do you understand what he's
I
asking?
don't think he's following you because on your account, it's like preferences themselves are goods, right?
Yeah.
And so it's weird to say a preference that I have is bad unless it conflicts. You hold more strongly or something.
Wait, so you don't think that you could have a preference against something bad?
I wasn't saying that.
Wait,
Go ahead.
Good.
Wait, okay. Then
His and yours.
How about you try to flesh this out for me then? So I'm just going to repeat what he said. So he says that when we talk about good and bad, he said that preferences determine this, correct? Did he not just say that?
Yeah, what you prefer, right, is what's good. What you prefer
Disprefer.
not to have, yeah. What you disprefer is
Yeah.
what's bad, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just asking, what determines this? Like within the
Your preferences?
no, what about the preferences determine whether something is good or bad?
If you prefer it.
So that determines good or bad
Yeah.
of said action. Okay, so and then when you talk about preferences, are you just saying that this is just like this is not tied or like indexed to some type of foundation?
Well, he
Jack, I think I understand.
tied
where
it
the
to your
miscommunication is.
perception, right? Like you perceive.
Jack, I think I understand why he's
Let another
misunderstanding.
homosexual speak. Go ahead, Davy.
So he's thinking you're saying that if you desire something, then, or if you prefer something, it's good in like a in the sense of like it implies that rather than that's what it means.
You want to try to straighten them out?
Yeah, like what Jack's saying isn't that you liking something makes it good. He's saying, as if that's some sort of separate thing. He's saying, Jack is saying, some prefer.
Okay, so if this is the case, then when it comes to like actions being good or bad, that means that there's no like consistency like across different groups, correct?
So like imagine food, right? Imagine if you said, me liking the food is what makes it tasty. And then like, well, what's this property and why is it that you liking a food grants it that property? Well, the property is just, it's just identical. You know what I mean? You see what I mean?
Yeah, sure. So what would be your response to the moral patterns like that exist in the world?
It's probably different explanations, all having to do with social psychology and evolution. Like,
Okay, such as?
you know, our different preferences. You know, like we evolved empathy because it was like an adaptation that was helpful or like beneficial to group survival or something. And a lot of our values come from that. And then like, you know, values spread, and that's probably explained
Davy,
social psychology and stuff.
I think that maybe the better way to go is not to offer an alternative explanation, but rather to point out that people who have a robust realist view like this are sort of committed to a kind of Cartesian epistemology such that the stable patterns could be explained by inversion,
Right.
rather than correct perception, right? And so it really makes no difference, right, to appeal to that. You see what I'm saying?
So when you look at, like a genuine moral disagreement, like how would you say that or you would say there's not a difference between something that's like a genuine moral disagreement and like a difference in taste? So you think, so like that's intuitive to you that...
But there are ways to reconcile moral disagreements.
Well, not if they're subjective. It's just going to be whoever.
That's just not true.
When it comes to fundamental values or something like that.
Well, wait a minute. So if it's just a matter of...
He just said if it's subjective, there's no way to reconcile them at all.
Well,
what I want to grant him is that if I have a fundamental value that is opposed to some fundamental value you have, that's a little bit like, or a lot maybe like thinking that, chocolate is good, where you think, no, chocolate is bad, but vanilla is good, right? And I think vanilla is bad. That's what I want to grant him.
Well, yeah, but I think what I'm trying to get at is the difference, like in a disagreement of what is better, chocolate or vanilla, compared to, I don't know, whether we should allow genocide to happen. Mm-hmm. I think that those are going to be vastly different. Would you not agree? Or are you going to hold those disagreement to be fundamentally
let's not actually answer
insane?
the question quite yet and ask, what do you think is different about it?
Comes to...
Well, hold on. I'm just curious what you think is the difference.
Well, yeah, sure. But what I'm doing now is I'm just investigating his view. So
I'm
not trying to flip the question back on you. I'm just wondering.
One difference is that when it comes to chocolate or vanilla, I might not have any desire to interfere with what you do, but when it comes to genocide, I might, right?
Yes,
and so
that's what I'm asking. In a disagreement, like what requires interference and what does not, because you would not interfere with me.
Well, just the
The desire to interfere,
there's-
right? I
well,
mean, you're just indifferent to the
there's separate
disagreement.
preferences between I value that this happens to me, but I don't value whether or not
Other people.
it happens to other people.
Yeah. Like
And
a
that,
system.
So the
that can
symmetry
happen with
breaker-
things other than morality. Like
Wait, well, hold on. So the
some
symmetry
people might
breaker-
get might get really
Yeah, so
angry.
the symmetry.
You eat
yeah,
a
so the
certain food
symmetry
and think it's
breaker
good.
is going to. Yeah, so the symmetry breaker is going to be when it affects other people. Correct.
No.
What?
No, that's one of the dimensions that you analyze the concept on. One of them could be whether I care about it for me personally or for everybody, if I care about it a lot or a little bit. And there's at
Right.
least
So,
one
yeah.
other.
So that's Flencer. Like that's my question. Right. Is what is going to be the
Yeah,
key?
but that's just going to come down to your desires.
Wait, what? What do you mean? It's going to come down to the desire? So if I feel strong, like I think, let me rephrase it this way. So when we're talking about ice cream, and we're talking about genocide, right? They're both preferences. What I'm asking is, what are the requirements in the genocide case that we would step in to basically reject someone else's desires, in the sense of stepping in and requiring some action versus
No,
not
it's not.
stepping in when it comes
It's
to
not in
ice cream?
there
virtue.
isn't
It's not.
any.
It's not in virtue of anything else. That's just fundamental. Sorry, did he cut out for anybody?
No, I just asked, what do you mean by fundamental?
Oh, meaning that it's not a fact or any further belief or desire. It's just these are this is something that I
There's not a further normative
or not.
explanation.
right.
I got to run, guys. It was good chatting with you all.
Yeah, thanks for coming up. I'll drop you.
Circuit party.
So Jack, I'm sorry, but like, what are you doing on my little live? Like, I'm just really confused. Did you?
To talk to 11 because see what 11
yeah,
does is he says abortion is what he says is the pro-choice position is irrational, right? And then when you ask him what he means by irrational, he says an argument to justify having an abortion, right? Or there isn't a good or sound argument there being any abortionists, right? But he grants that not all values are justified by art. So then what he does is he does this thing that, it's kind of like, I don't know if you know this idea of like name the trait, but basically somebody will invoke some principle where they say, this is why I think abortions are justified. They're justified in accord with this principle. And then he'll try to point to some counterexample, a possible counterexample, and say, well, why wouldn't that commit you to accepting this, right? And I wanted to know from him, if somebody didn't believe in moral principles, how he could object to their view, right? Because my guess is he doesn't have a way of objecting to their view if they
so
don't
Jack-
have moral principles.
So Jack, why are you not willing to say that preferences, like we can index these to some type of morality?
I mean, I don't have a strong view on that. It's just seems like it's potentially misleading. But yeah, if everybody understood what was meant by that and used the terminology consistently, that would be fine.
So do you think, like, what do you think about morality? Do you think it's just simply like reduced down to preferences?
The way that you said that is why Jack doesn't want to use the word preference, because preference implies a value that's not strongly held.
Well, no, I mean, I'll grant it.
It simply makes it sound trivial, or like these are trivial matters, which isn't implied at all by how Jack uses the word preference.
Well, sure. I mean, like I said, I'm just trying to. I mean, I can. That's not a problem at all. But I think that when you compare it to
Yeah, but see, this is just sophistry.
Okay, in what way?
Because you use the word preference is loaded with what I just pointed out. So then when you compare it to stuff like chocolate and vanilla, you say, okay, Jack reduces it to preferences. Preferences sound trivial, so let's talk about trivial things and say genocide is like those things. You see what you're saying?
Well, right. That's
sophistry.
That's why I'm looking for the argument for like the difference here.
Yeah, and I think we already explained that.
So, Davy, oh, sorry, you went coffee cup.
No, I can still hear you when I'm out of the app.
Yeah, but if you were doing something, I did not want to ask a question.
Well, nothing was happening, so I wasn't on the app.
Okay, I was just simply saying. Anyways, so Jack. Oh, well, now I lost my train of thought. Never mind. All right, Jack, here's a question for you. So if moral value is going to be on some individual preference or desire, then what's the argument that moral disagreement would not reduce to just differences in subjective taste?
But I'm saying that they do.
On one interpretation of subjective taste, they do, and on another, they don't.
And so what's the difference there?
Well, if you interpret it as subjective taste, what movies you prefer, then it doesn't reduce to those things. And if you interpret subjective taste as the value someone has, then it does reduce to those things.
Right, but like what's the argument for that other than just repeating that it's just preference? Like I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
Or are you just asking for the argument that moral disagreements reduce down to differences in values?
Well, you said in one case, like with
if
trivial, but it's trivial in something like chocolate and vanilla, is what you had said. So there's clearly a difference here. So I'm trying to understand.
The difference is how strongly the value is held.
Right. So if I really, 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 really like chocolate ice cream, or like let's say something like even a little bit stronger that people can relate
right, but
to.
See, this is just more sophistry because you're still.
Well, I'm just asking some argument.
You're still taking advantage of the way that of sort of the subtextual lack of value in chocolate and vanilla, right?
Right, but we agree that there's going to be some difference there, correct?
Difference in the events or actions is a difference in how strongly the values are held.
Right, so are you now saying that in the case of like genocide, a stronger preference than ice cream?
No shit.
Okay, well, but once again, would you say that that's going to be objective and across the board or no?
What does that even mean?
Yeah, so let's just say
how can a preference be objective?
Well, no. So what I mean by this is you said, well, duh, when it comes to genocide compared to ice cream. Well,
Yeah,
what
I'm
if,
saying,
wait, what
duh.
if,
Most people value one much more over the other.
right, but not me. Yeah, right. So I think ice cream, like I feel more strongly about that than some genocide. So now, what would you say to that? Like, what is this now trivial? Because now it might be one thing that might be trivial to you is not trivial to me. Correct?
Well, at some point, someone's values are so different from yours that you can't really reason with them, can you?
Well, that's
Like, let me just talk about it. What if someone, what if you try to convince someone, like, okay, what's one thing about Eve?
what's one thing about the world.
Yeah, just like really general. Like, I don't know, the Earth is round.
Or I would just say that like people exist.
Okay. What if I tried to point you to that? What if someone didn't believe that and I said, okay, well, can't you make an inference to the best explanation or something that people exist? And then they say, I don't accept inference to the best I don't accept deductive, inductive, or abductive reasoning. Every proposition is both true and every proposition is true and every proposition is false. And since I don't trust abductive reasoning or inductive reasoning, I don't trust science at all. In what way? Anything, right? Like when your epistemic values are so different, there's not really much to talk about. Now, it's similarly with morals. If you said, genocide is bad because pain is bad, and there's like a lot of pain or something when genocide happens, maybe something like that. I mean, at some point, if you go down far enough, they're going to say something to the point where you can't reason with them anymore.
Right, but my question to that is, do you not think that that's going to be reduced to something that's more objective? Because like I could give you a case for like why genocide would be good, right? So
that case is going to be by trying to appeal to other values I have. So when I was giving the genocide is bad because pain is bad, I was hoping, okay, you think pain is bad, so maybe using that value that we have, I can convince you of this. I think that's how all moral disagreements go. You try to appeal to some other value to show why the thing you're arguing about, it's more reasonable to think your position. Sure, you could, but at some point, maybe there's not something that's further to be argued about. It's just like a fundamental value. Like maybe pain being bad. The same thing Jack said when he defined fundamental. There's not a further normative explanation.
That argument. Not